Every spring, the same patch of crabgrass comes back in the same corner of your lawn. You pull it, you spray it, you dig it out by the root. And by July, it is right back where it started, spreading a little wider than last year. Here's the part almost nobody tells you. By the time you can see crabgrass in your lawn, you have already lost the cheapest fight against it. Because crabgrass is not really a weed you kill. It is a weed you stop before it ever wakes up. And the method to stop it is one of the simplest, cheapest things you will ever do for your lawn if you get one detail right. Stop. I want to be honest with you before we go further. There is no magic spray that erases crabgrass overnight, and anyone selling you that is selling you a refill, not a solution. What actually works is older, quieter, and a lot less exciting than a miracle bottle. It is a barrier you lay down at the exact right moment in spring, before the seeds underground have a chance to sprout. So, let me show you how that barrier works, why timing beats every product on the shelf, and the one mistake that wastes most of what people spend on it. First, understand what crabgrass actually is. Crabgrass is an annual weed. Every single plant you see dies on its own when the cold arrives in fall. But before it dies, one plant drops thousands of seeds into your soil. Those seeds sit there all winter, dormant, waiting. And they all wake up at roughly the same moment in spring, triggered not by the calendar, not by the air, but by the temperature of the soil itself. This is the detail everything depends on. According to turfgrass research compiled across more than a dozen university extension programs, including Penn State, Purdue, and Michigan State, crabgrass seeds begin to germinate once the soil about 2 inches down holds steady at around 55 degrees Fahrenheit for several days in a row. Not the air temperature, the soil temperature. And this is exactly where most homeowners go wrong. They wait until they feel warm spring air or until they see the first crabgrass blade, and by then the underground seeds are already sprouting and the cheapest window is closed. So here is the easiest and cheapest method. In plain terms, you apply a simple pre-emergent barrier to your lawn before the soil reaches that 55-degree trigger. A pre-emergent does not kill an existing plant. It does something quieter. It forms a thin protective layer across the top of the soil, and when a waking seed tries to push its first root and shoot upward, that layer stops it from establishing. The seed never becomes a plant. You never see the crabgrass at all, and because you are stopping thousands of seeds with one early application instead of fighting hundreds of grown plants all summer, this is by far the cheapest path there is. One properly timed application can hold protection across most of the season. Compare that to spraying the same patch 3 and 4 times from June through August and still losing ground every year. Quick, honest note before I continue. I'm not going to tell you a single product name because the right active ingredient depends on your grass type and whether you plan to seed this spring, and the wrong choice can do real harm to a lawn. What I can tell you is the principle that makes any of them work, and it is always the same. Get it down before the soil hits the trigger. Now, the timing. Here's the rule that university extension programs keep repeating. Aim to apply your pre-emergent roughly 10 to 14 days before the soil reaches 55 degrees, not after. That early cushion matters because the barrier needs to already be in place when the seeds start to stir. In practice, across the United States, that window lands in late winter to early spring, and it shifts by several weeks depending on where you live. In the southeast and along the Gulf Coast, that often means late February into early March. Through the mid-Atlantic and the transition zone, it tends to fall in mid-March into mid-April. In the northeast, late March into April. And across the Great Lakes and the upper Midwest, April into mid-May. But do not trust the calendar alone, because every spring runs early or late. The reliable move is to track your own soil temperature with an inexpensive soil thermometer pushed about 2 inches down, checked in the morning. There's also an old gardener's signal worth knowing. For a long time, people watched for the forsythia bush to bloom as the cue to apply, and there's real grounding to that, because both forsythia and crabgrass respond to accumulated warmth. But the correlation is imperfect, because forsythia reacts to air and daylight while crabgrass reacts to the soil. A warm spell can pop the forsythia open while the soil is still cold, so treat the bloom as a reminder to start checking your thermometer, not as the green light by itself. Now here is the one mistake that quietly wastes most of what people spend on this method. Applying too early. If you put the barrier down weeks before it is needed, it can begin to break down in the soil before the crabgrass seeds ever wake up, and the protection thins out right when you need it most in late spring. Too late, and the seeds have already sprouted, so the barrier has nothing to stop. The whole method lives or dies on that narrow window, which is exactly why the cheap part is the product, and the valuable part is the timing. There's one more thing that makes this even cheaper, and almost nobody connects it. A taller mowing height. Turfgrass research shows a direct link between how high you mow and how deep your grass roots, and a thicker, taller, deeper-rooted lawn shades the soil surface and crowds out germinating crabgrass on its own. Raising your mowing height costs nothing, and it quietly reduces crabgrass pressure even with no product down at all. So the cheapest lawn is the one where the grass itself is doing part of the work. Now, a fair warning, because I would rather you know this than be surprised. Pre-emergent barriers do not tell the difference between a crabgrass seed and a grass seed. If you are planning to overseed thin or bare spots this spring, a standard pre-emergent will stop your new grass from sprouting too. In that case, the usual advice is to seed in the fall instead, or to look into the one narrow class of products labeled safe for new seedings, and to read that label carefully. This is the kind of detail where the right answer depends entirely on your specific lawn, and getting it wrong undoes a whole season of effort. Which brings me to the honest limit of a video like this one. I can give you the principle, the trigger temperature, and the timing window, and those alone will put you ahead of most of your neighbors this spring. What I cannot fit into one video is the part that changes from lawn to lawn. There were 3 things in particular I had to leave out of this video, because each one depends on your grass type and your climate, and getting them wrong is what wastes the whole season. The exact pre-emergent active ingredient suited to cool season versus warm season lawns, and which single class is safe to use when you are also seeding. The region by region soil temperature calendar with the early application cushion already built in, so you're not guessing at the window. And the split application method that extends protection through late summer to catch the stragglers without over-applying. I put all 3 together in detail in the full guide, and the first link in the description is where it lives. For now, here is the one thing to carry away from this video. Stop fighting crabgrass in July. Win it in March before the soil ever reaches 55 degrees, with one sheet barrier laid down at the right moment and a mower set a little higher. That is the easiest, cheapest method there is, and it has been hiding in plain sight in university research for decades. If this was useful to you, there's far more of it on this channel. Subscribe, so the next time your soil starts to warm, you already know exactly what to do.